Hello and welcome to the video on Use Burp Suite to fuzz the user inputs of a website. My name is Blake Jacobs and I'm an educator at Mozo Cybersecurities Institutes. What this video consists of, what this lesson consists of is the following specifications. So download and install Burp Suite. Download and install Damn Vulnerable Web App. Now, Damn Vulnerable Web App is a deliberately written web application to practice your security testing and web pen testing. So it has a lot of vulnerabilities you can practice, practice your web pen testing. So it might have cross-site scripting, IDORs, and things like that. So you can practice doing those just in a very safe environment on your local system, so you're not affecting anyone else's website, not damaging any property. Configure your browser to tunnel its HTTPS connections via Burp Proxy. And also we need to configure Damn Vulnerable Web App in the lowest security settings. I think by default it's on impossible, which is really hard. Also we need to use Burp's spidering tool to crawl through DVWA, Damn Vulnerable Web App. By default, actually with Burp Community only comes with passive scanning capabilities. Active is in the Pro version, which we'll go through the differences later on. We need to identify all the pages and forms that allow user inputs. We also need to download a fuzzing directory list from the internet. And I've got a really good one that I use on a daily basis, which is called sec lists. We also need to fuzz user inputs and demonstrate that you could identify at least 3 vulnerabilities. And we need to we can't have false positives. We're going to verify that they are an actual vulnerability by manually testing for those. And that's the last part of the specifications. Validate the vulnerabilities that are not validate the vulnerabilities are not false positives by triggering them. So we need to make sure they're not false positives. So now let's look at the agenda. We're going to be talking about all these areas of fuzzing. What is fuzzing? We're going to be talking about when and why would an attacker fuzz a website, and what is Burp Suite's spider tool. Then we're going to talk about a technical demonstration with Damn Vulnerable Web App. Now, what is this very strange word called fuzzing? Bizarre. Well, fuzzing is a technique used in web security where an attacker will use a word list to brute force all possible security-related issues. Automation is key. Automation is kind of fuzzing. Here's a list of some things we can find during fuzzing. We can find vulnerabilities. We can find endpoints, subdomains, hidden parameters, and even hidden files. You might have a website like, say, for example, yahoo.com. It might fuzz some subdomain. It could be YQL test.yahoo.com. We use the word list to fuzz. We might find, a configuration file in the root directory. We might find that the endpoint is vulnerable to a path traversal SSRF. We might find endpoints. We want to find all possible endpoints on that domain. We want to find subdomains by brute forcing. Instead of www, we put like a variable there and we fuzz all subdomains with a word list. We might even find hidden parameters. There might be like we might look through JavaScript. We might find there is a hidden parameter. We might use automation tool to fuzz for hidden parameters. And that's where we can find some good vulnerabilities with their hidden parameters. Now, when and why would an attacker fuzz a website? Well, they do it for so many different reasons, and plus it's very common for attackers to automate with fuzzing. So here we go. An attacker would use fuzzing as a form of technique on very large scopes. And here's an example. If you have Yahoo, for instance, Yahoo has thousands upon thousands of subdomains. Subdomains are a division of a domain. And here's an example of what a subdomain looks like. We have production test.yahoo.com. We have YQL API yahoo.com. And these are all subdomains. The root one is www, which is World Wide Web. That's the main subdomain. Now, we can't just manually go through all these thousands upon thousands of websites and find stuff manually, because that would take years. We have to use automation. That's when fuzzing comes into play. We might want to find some really good endpoints like Swagger or something like that, And this is when fuzzing comes into play, where we use a tool to actually brute force all the possible Swagger files in every subdomain. There might be maybe 500,000 that has Swagger. Who knows? Basically trying out all these directories, all these payloads in a file against the website. And so we can use fuzzing to find other subdomains that look very interesting. That's where we would start fuzzing the endpoints and find vulnerabilities. What is Burp Suite's spider tool? Well, I'm going to go first of all, what is Burp overall? So Burp Suite is an inspection proxy tool that sits between the website and the browsing, monitoring every request that comes through the proxy in Burp. Now, that's pretty much what an interception proxy is. It just sits right between the browser. It sits between the browser and the website, and everything you click on, everything you press and type, like click and type in, it will get sent through the proxy, and it will put that in the proxy history, and it will generate a sitemap. So it has many features for web security, such as a repeater. Now, a repeater is something we use every time we use Burp. Like, a repeater is the main tool in Burp that an attacker would use. Because what it's useful for is repeating your requests over and over again. And when they analyze a request to see there's a vulnerability, that's what repeaters use for. Intruder is our fuzzing tool. That's where we can fuzz inputs and find vulnerabilities and flaws. So we'll talk about it later on, but we set these placeholders where the payloads go. And they have different attack types, which is pretty cool. Like, they have cluster fork, they have also cluster bomb, they have pitchfork, they have a sniper, which just targets one specific variable at a time, injects one payload in that variable. And passive spidering. So, like I said, Burp Professional doesn't come with active, Burp Professional only comes with active. The Burp Community doesn't come with active scanning. So what is passive spidering? Well, it's used for crawling the website as we click through it. So when we click through, say, a website, we might click a login form, we might submit something, we might post something, we might, get something, and then it all comes through the proxy and spiders each time you click on something. It will go, start at login, it might go down, and it might go and find, it might find login, and then it might find logout. It might just find all these different links and stuff through passive spidering and just generate all these links that will just crawl through the website. Kind of like a spider, it's crawling through the website and clicking on possible things and then stopping. Sequencer is a really, really good tool. Now, this is really good for testing entropy and randomness of session tokens and cookies. So if you found an IDOR with a session token, I'm not going to go through what insecure direct object referencing is, aka .idor. I'm not going to talk about what IDORs are, but all I can tell you is they're a type of authorization, or they're an access, they're a business logic flaw. They're business logic flaw. We won't talk about that. That will be another video. But if you find a session token that is vulnerable to an IDOR, we want to find out how random is that session token, and if it can be exploited. Because if you just have the session token, it might be made by design to not be brute forced, or might be very random. So, but the sequencer is really good for analyzing the entropy of tokens and etc. Comparer is especially useful for IDORs when we're looking at the differences between two requests. Even with cookies, even with anything, you might find an XSS, and we want to find differences. We might find anything that we want to compare two requests, we use comparer with. And with an IDOR, you might have an AN point with an like a user. It might be like get user equals 101. And then when it gets the user, that user ID, it will return, say, the information about that user, like the password, the username, and all that sort of stuff. But if you change that 101 to 102 and we access other people's username and passwords, then it's very vulnerable to an IDOR. Then we have Extender, which is a very, very cool feature that allows us to download apps for Burp, like Auto Repeater, different tools that extend Burp's functionality, and ones that can actually help us find different issues. And then the Target, which is a sitemap of all the crawled items. Target is very useful. And then the Proxy is pretty much the core interceptor of the website. Okay, now let's go through a technical demonstration. A damn vulnerable web app, and we're going to show you around in Burp. I've logged in. The username for damn vulnerable web app is admin. The password is password. So what we have to do in order to we've got it set up in Kali, because I'm assuming you guys have all set this up in Kali, and there is a few things we need to do to actually get this working. The first thing we need to do, if you're in Firefox, you need to go to About, double columns configure, and turn on Network, Proxy, allow hijack, and localhost. And because if you don't do this, it's going to not capture on localhost. That's what we need to do for it to work on localhost. Now we're going to open up Burp. So I'm going to get that up running first. This is Burp. This is what it looks like. So let's go through each tab. So The Burp tab up here is obviously you can create a click bandit for certain things. We got the project. We can't save in the community, so that's a bummer, but only Pro can. Intruder, repeater, and this is we can detach dashboards. We can detach things. Now dashboard, when you first open it up, it should have should by default have this part here that says you know, it has some vulnerabilities that says you cannot use that in Pro, so just ignore that. But this is where we've got a passive crawl turned on. We can turn it off so it won't capture any requests while passively crawling, but we want to turn it on generally. Target. This is where we are crawling through the website as we click, and it generates a target. So it generates obviously as passively crawled through localhost. And it's come up here in the target section. And we can also click on this little bar up here. It says filter hidden out of scope and request items. Click on that and it has more options. We don't want to click hide or show all, because that will basically show all. We'll click on all these buttons here. We don't want that. We don't want to go hide all, otherwise it will hide everything. If you do that by accident, we can just go revert to changes and it'll go back to normal. Now, generally what we want to do is when we are testing an in-scope item, we'll go to our scopes in sitemap, go use advanced scope, and we want to click here, copy that, and just paste it in there. And that will generate a site scope. So this is our in-scope items we are testing. Out of scope means that we're not testing for those. Another thing we can do is if you're doing like a very pen test on a big organization, we can use regular expressions. So we can go dot asterisk dot slash, and with that in our hosting range, that's going to test for subdomains. So it's going to crawl for all subdomains. That's very useful too, but we're not going to worry about that, as we're only doing it on one domain, one host, which is localhost. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to reload the page. And it's going to generate here a link, and this is going to be our localhost. These are all the things that's crawled already. Let's just click through the web page a bit more, and we'll just randomly type in some information. We'll go home, we're instructions. We'll go command injection, and we'll just type in something random here. Submit. As you can see here, ping request could not, there's something going on here. It's using a system command to ping an IP or something. So this is very interesting. We actually might find a very interesting vulnerability here, which, as it says, command injection. Cross-up request forgery. We'll type a password or something. Just type in change or whatever. We'll type in password, as it's already the same password. And what we're doing is we're just basically clicking on all these links and typing in information just to get a sitemap and get a Hoiber history, like generate the sitemap. So we've got all these links and stuff we can test for in Fuzz. File inclusion. Obviously we need to go allow your include in order for this to work. But we won't worry about that yet. We can test for file uploads too. We can just upload any file. We might upload a picture. Might upload just a random picture. Might upload. Alright, we just upload, say, this one. Okay, so upload is successful. Likes a PNG image. Insecure capture. We've got Sql Injection. Might we just type in random stuff there. Sql Injection, you usually quote, and it will come up with a SQL error. Obviously, that's Sql Injection there. So, but we want to do this automatically. We just want to type in random stuff so it passively crawls, so we can then test out the inputs for vulnerabilities. Now, what I forgot to mention is by default it'll be set to impossible. We want to set that to low, just to remind you guys what was required in the lesson. Sql Injection blind. Boom, boom, boom. Just type in that. XSS stored. XSS stored is pretty bad. It's something we'll probably test through fuzzing, because XSS is cross-site scripting attack. So that's where the input gets reflected into the response, and exactly the same, without any filtering, we can inject JavaScript into the context of the application and get malicious things happening, alert box pop up and stuff. Csp Bypass, so we can now allow to content security policies allow cross-site scripting to sort of helps prevent cross-site scripting attacks. But if we look at the content security policy, sometimes we can bypass that with certain attacks. JavaScript. Let's just try and now look at our proxy, and we'll see we've got all these requests here. We've got all these things we can test for. So one thing we can do is we can sort by parameter. So we'll show only parameterized requests, and what's going to happen here is only going to show the parameters that have the requests that have parameters. So let's send this one to the repeater. So we can type in Control R, or we can just right click and go send to repeater, and it will go to the repeater, and we can send it off, and then we get the response back. Now what is a request and a response? A request is nothing but what we've got control of. We've got control of the request, and it's what's going to be sent to the server. So the request contains these request types like post, get, delete, options for to knowing what we're allowed to use. It's got a host where we captured the request from, and a user agent, which is what they're using, which is we're using Mozilla, and other various headers and post data and parameters and stuff. And we send it off, and we get a response back. And the response we get is a 200 OK, meaning the server liked it, accepted it, thumbs up. Now I like to send this to Intruder. Press Control I will go to Intruder, or we can just right click and go send to Intruder. And what we're also going to do is we're going to download sec lists. So sec lists is a huge amount of payloads for fuzzing, and I recommend downloading that. It's on GitHub for free, and you just click on code and download zip, and you just extract it and you use it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to leave with all these. We're going to sort of leave all these are variables. We can clear them, and we can add in a variable. So we clear the variables, and these basically what we do is we type in a couple of characters and we go add. This is like a placeholder for where the payload will get injected into. We're not going to worry about this. We're just going to worry about that. We can leave it. We can refresh it or auto, and it will automatically check things we're going to test for. And we can do a pitchfork, which is another type of attack. Sniper only uses one payload at a time directly at that input. Now with a battering ram, it might use more than one payload. Pitchfork is like every parameter, boom boom, and clustering bomb is the same thing. These last three are all parameters, but different types of attacks. One might put the same payload in every parameter. One might test a parameter and then test the next one, inject a payload, next one, inject a payload, next one, which is generally a good case to do like that. We're just going to go sniper, and we're going to clear this and add a variable on IP, because by looking at IP, we know that it's after an IP address. It's got this exec endpoint. This is the endpoint here. It's got exec, so it's executing the command, so we can test by command injection. Let's go to payloads, and let's load a payload from our sec lists. And let's load fuzzing. And let's do command injection comics, like that. It's just going to take a while to load because it's a big word list. And let's just turn off your encoding. And what we're after is it's going to, let's have a look at our, well, actually, let's do a different one, sorry. Let's do, that's a little bit just too complex for what we're doing for this take. Let's try, XSS, let's try discovery. No, that's another thing. We can discover things. We can discover variables, web content, DNS for subdomains. What we're going to do is we're just going to input a couple, and we'll do the fuzzing for SQL injection and fuzzing for a cross-site scripting. So what we use for OS command injection is pipes. So we do pipe, who am I? You might just type in ls. You might try different pipes. Who am I? With that. Now these pipes are in Linux a command to, it's kind of like a way to execute a second command. So let's just fuzz these three just for simplicity. I'm going to start attack. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Now I'll answer it because I'm making the video, but what you need to look at with the fuzzing results is you want to look for any differences, any outliers. So looking at this, we see there's a content length of 6,187, which means, if you sort by length, it means there's two with 4,575 and one with 6,165. So by looking at these are both the same. That's the base payload which we started off with, which is AA. ls is obviously the same as the base payload, which we expect nothing there. Why? Because they're both the same, and with ls, it's not a OS command injection attack, and base payload AA would do nothing. So they're both the same, expecting the same response content length. But look at these ones here. They're both different, but that one's 5 and that one's 7. So I'm assuming if you look at one of these, it might be it. So if you look at who am I with end-to-end, which is another way to execute another command, we get this in the response. So we get a ping help section. So it's printing out the ping help, means that it's executed a command, and we've got the help from the ping command. If we do this one, which is different pipes, so sometimes different pipes do different things, we'll look at a response and we see that we've just executed OS command injection, and it's actually printed out our user. And we can do fuzzing a lot for different things. I can't show you anything else because it's you just need to do the exercises yourself, and you need to do find the 3 vulnerabilities yourself. But I'm just showing you an example of what we can do. For Sql injection, just say this is the payload here. You would obviously want to find something else. Find something like, I know these are obviously Sql injection, but you want to find, just hypothetically, let's do this one. Send to the repeater, or actually we'll send it straight to Intruder and we'll fuzz it. But what we want to do is we'll just say we'll do a different attack this time, a different payload attack. So we're going to do the cluster bomb. It's going to test out every payload on every it's going to test out payloads on every like input. We might just load a simple one. Might load cross-site scripting, and we'll do just this one here. And we're going to load that for each of the inputs. And what's going to happen is we turn off, neuron coding is used for if you want to try and do some bypasses, or sometimes payload coding is pretty good, but I usually generally turn that off. Options also has, number of threads, so we can increase the threads to 100 so it goes faster, but that's only for the pro version. And then, you might want to grep for things. So let's do example of, we might want to grep for, we'll grep for like, remove these. We might grep for, let's look at a payload and see if it gets reflected back. Let's grep for this. Let's grep for alert 1. So let's add alert 1. And this is used for testing to see if it gets reflected. This is good for, the grep match is good for seeing if the payload got reflected in the response, and we match with that. So let's go to start now. Obviously it's not going to be vulnerable, we don't know, but I don't think it will be. And you'll see here that our alert hasn't been reflected in the response at all in any of these payloads. So we can verify each one. So we can go, okay, let's see if that is in a response by typing in alert 1. And as you can see, it's not. It's just a redirect. It doesn't like it. So grep is good for cross-site scripting. Let's have a look for some extender. Let's have a look for some good plugins I use for my daily pen tests. Now you go to extender, you go to B App Store, which is Burp App Store, and some good payloads that are free for testing for IDORs, right? Is Auto Repeater. Auto Repeater is kind of the same as Proxy Options, Match and Replace down here. Now, match and replace is where we might match, say we might add in a parameter name of, say, URL equals, and we want to, wherever we find this in the request, we might want to replace it with URL equals and then a payload of some sort, like HTTP, which is like SSRF payload. And that will get replaced. But Burp Repeater, Auto Repeater, is really good for doing that, but it's specifically really good for IDORs. Let's install that, and I'll show you how to configure that for IDORs. And we're not going to go through any other plugins, that's for you to play around, but we'll just configure Auto Repeater and show you some good things we can do with IDORs, which I use quite a bit for my insecure direct object referencing testing. It's going to take some time. You go to Options, Extensions, it should be listed there. Another good tool, I think, is for Pro. I'm pretty sure it is. Which is Reflected Parameters. Yeah, Pro. That's a bummer because that's a really good tool. Also, another really good one is it's called Turbo Intruder, which is really good for fuzzing fuzzing something really quickly. Okay, there it's installed. We go to auto repeater. Now what we want to do is we want to find something like, you know, for example, we might find include.php. Might find that everywhere in the request and might replace it with a payload. So we go to basic planes, add, and we've got these different types of things we can use to match. So we just want to match a request string and we put in that. And then we might want to replace it with // we'll just say like // ASDF. And we want to place that OR. So everywhere it finds this in this include.php in a request, we replace it with OR. And this is good for IDORs because what we can do is if we say got 2 accounts and we got the 2 different IDs, we got the victim's ID and the attacker's ID. We can go request string and we can place say like 101, which is the victim attackers, and 102, which is the victims. Replace OR, okay, and if it founds that 101 anywhere in the request, place it 102 and it's got access to that person's information. Let's go back to our file inclusion. Let's just click on file 1. And as you can see, in Burp, in auto repeater, it's found it and it's replaced it with // ASDF. Awesome. It's found that too and it's replaced it with that. And we go to the modified one, and that's where we get our modified request and something there as well, as you can see. And I'm not going to show you that one. That's something for you to find out. But we found something there. Let's see if you can figure that one out. Right, yeah, anyway. And that's pretty much Burp. And Burp is really good for web pen testing and hacking. Pretty much every security hacker uses it for hacking because it's quite advanced, it's quite sophisticated, and it's really useful for hacking. There's also an open source one called it's also free. It's called a WASP Zap, and it's called Z-Attack Proxy. It's the same sort of thing as Burp, but it has a free active scanner, and it's not many people use it compared to Burp, but it's still very good and it has really good functionalities. Okay, so that concludes the lesson. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on using Burp for fuzzing inputs. Hope you all learnt so much, and a big thank you for being a part of the community, and all the best with your hacking journeys, and catch you later. Bye bye.